Hello and welcome to Dungeons and Drama Nerds. My name is Todd Brian Backus, and today I'll be joined by the cast of Mice and Monsters, our D&D 5th edition adventure written by Matthew Minnicino. We'll be talking about character, backstory, and playing D&D 5e today. So let's get started with some introductions. Can each of you tell me your name, pronouns, and a little bit about your characters, maybe their name, race, and class? Let's start with Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Arfree. My pronouns are he, him, and I am playing Sriracha, who is a tiefling, and he is both sweet and hot.
He is sweet and hot and an eldritch knight.
That's right.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick Orvis. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I played Gavin the Glorious, who is a gnome and also an Eldritch Knight fighter.
Awesome. Rene.
Hi, hello, Rene Goddess here. I played Nokuzola, who is a tabaxi. I'm a bard, y'all.
And Chris.
Hello, I'm Christopher Diercksen. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I played Chadrick Bosley. He is a valor bard and a human. He is the most human you can imagine.
He certainly is. So, now that we've got that out of the way, can y'all tell me a little bit about what inspired your character? Where did they come from for you? I know when I was building my first character, I wanted to blend Cardcaptor Sakura with Hellboy, and so I made like a tiefling warlock that collected magic pages from a book, and like that was what my driving focus was. But like, what are some of the different inspirations for your characters?
Nothing really inspired it except the fact that I was doing the game with y'all. Mm-hmm. And being friends already with Christopher Diercksen helped me a lot. So
you would not let me help you. I don't know what you're talking about.
What I mean
How
is,
could I possibly help
what
you?
I mean is, in the moment, I was helped by the fact that you are like a little brother to me, and I don't find you annoying, but but Sriracha certainly finds you're human super
Chadrick,
annoying.
Yeah.
And so that is where I got everything I got. I honestly had no idea what the F I was doing from beginning to end. No spoilers, but you know.
But you knew that I was annoying and knew how to deal with that.
That's right. That is correct.
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
I've never gone drinking in Europe with somebody I wasn't in love with.
That's true.
So I went out with you.
All right. I could talk a lot about my backstory. So I have a lot of experience playing Dungeons and Dragons, and also directing theater and and working with writers as a dramaturg. So I love all the rule sets that Dungeons and Dragons provides, because restrictions provide opportunity to tell a story a little bit. And so it's really fun for me to sort of build things. But for Chadrick specifically, I liked as a straight white male theater director with, a quote unquote career, who like recognizes and understands like my responsibility, or at least I try to recognize and understand my responsibility to be as privileged as I am, without being very successful in this realm as a director. It makes you wonder just how much of my own commitment to doing this is as like a career and like continuing. I'm 35 years old. I'm still directing theater, then like on an independent level. It makes you ask yourself, like, is it just unearned confidence of like the straight white male variety? And so with Chadrick, he is literally a bard. He is like trained, and he knows how to use music to access the arcane weave and all this stuff. But he is just totally average as far as charisma is concerned. He's very well suited to be a fighter. He's very well suited to do other things. And so with the Valor Bard, this is a swashbuckler, right? That's how there's sort of constructed.
Yeah.
So I essentially created a fighter who like refused to believe that he wasn't a bard, and that of course he's talented. And so like removing any of that self-awareness like plummets his wisdom, but he's a smart guy because he can still get by and do these things. So he's got a decent intelligence, right? And it's just this like, when you start to really break down sort of like what you can do with this system, you can create really fascinating opportunities as a role player to like, frankly, for me, play out my worst artistic fear of self-doubt.
Yeah.
This character is who I fear that I am deep down. But like I can do it in a fun way with people that I trust and like still make that person a hero, you know? And so like there's a lot of like personal value that comes to these things. And that's just like one aspect of it, you know? Like that's just, I've got a folder full of 30 characters on my Google Drive. At a certain point, it's just like, who else could we be?
Totally.
That makes sense.
30 characters in your Google Drive?
I mean,
that's it?
in this, I mean, that I haven't given to people to play. I gave Percy this one character. It was a barbarian, this female barbarian with an actor background. And she was just so tired of being a waitress that one day, like some patron smacked her ass and she like went into a full-on rage and now can't get a job as a bartender and can't get a job as an actor, but just desperately wants to be an actor.
Wow.
But they're a barbarian and function within the game. Like they just like lose their shit and like kill goblins. So I don't know. You can make lots of fun things. I get excited. Sorry, I'm like monologuing. I'm gonna stop.
You're fine.
Can I ask a question? I thought that the characters that we built were all based on the roll of a die. No?
Are you talking about your stats and like how charismatic or how much wisdom you had or what that was about? Or
yeah, I mean, I have to say that the parameters that were given to me for what he was and what he could do didn't, I think maybe because of my inexperience with the medium, I didn't know. It wasn't until we started playing and Christopher Diercksen had a voice that I was like, oh, I can do that? Oh, I didn't think about it as a role-playing game so much as a game with dice.
Totally. I think that's absolutely fair.
I really love playing games like this with people who have not played them before. But partly for those moments of discovery, but I do actually think that regardless of the exact system, this is always one of the biggest hurdles, is that, you know, in play they can be so fun and so like freewheeling and so focused on role playing and improvisation exploration. And then to get to that point, you have to, I'm paraphrasing somebody else, but you have to do the equivalent of like fill out your taxes for like the process of actually creating the character. And I haven't found a good solution to that yet from a like game design standpoint. From a practical standpoint, I think it's, as Chris alluded to, sometimes it's if I'm playing with somebody new, I'll say, okay, describe what you want your character to be to me, and then like I'll just go off and do the like gamey work and hand them the character sheet and be like, here, I'll explain how it works as we go, but it's always a hurdle.
I want to point out that the way that Kevin described like this game as like sort of like a role-playing game with dice, right, is a perfectly valid way of playing this game. There are some, this started in the wargamer tradition where they were literally just like, let's try and quantify the strength of the British army. Do you know what I mean? And like, and also to quantify the French army and like recreate the Battle of Agincourt and like figure out who would win, right? Like that's a law. That's where Dungeons and Dragons started, and it's only in the recent editions, especially this edition, where that they really unlocked and leaned into what I love about it, right? The way I like to play the game, which is that sort of like with a voice or whatever. So like there's nothing wrong with that, but I agree with you, Nick, that like that is a hurdle, and I think they do a good job. Like if we started with level 3 characters, I mean that's in a lot of ways the learning curve of levels 1 through 3. what you described.
Oh.
It's like learn how to hit something, then learn how to hit something with magic, then learn how to change somebody's mind, but then learn how to hit somebody really hard with magic, and then you're off in the races.
Rene, would you like to talk about your background for Nokuzola?
Yeah, there wasn't much thought. I knew I didn't want to be human. And I knew that I really enjoy magical things. I know I'm a witch, so I was like, I want my character to be some kind of a witch. And I thought, like, it just makes sense that I'm whatever a performer is, because that's what's going to suit me well. I understood it was a role-playing game, and that was the part I was excited about. And then in the midst of, well, I'll say like Chadrick for sure. Like, I was like, oh shit, this person is playing. What the fuck am I supposed to do now?
Thrilled to be the Laura Bailey of this podcast. That's deep cut critical role knowledge. Sorry.
No, I think if you hadn't existed, then I probably wouldn't have had quite the confidence, honestly, to just keep on going, not knowing what I was doing.
Or you kept your accent up the entire time.
Mostly. I lost it a little bit, but thank you.
It was great, though.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. But yeah, I think like I just discovered I was an artist, like in 2013. Before that, the way art worked for me was really rooted in self-harm. It was really rooted in like producing. And I was a ballerina, or am a ballerina. So my value of art is really rooted as a 9-year-old of going into my first real ballet class and those conversations of what art is. So
rigid. Yeah,
extremely rigid. And I realized that I, as a person, being a Black woman in America and then in Maine, my other spaces of being rigid and protection make it really hard to play. Unless like I really know you, or I've built space with you, or like there's just spaces of protection that make it really hard for people of color to play. And so for me, this was like a chance to be like, how much can I just play and no judgment? No, I don't look stupid. I don't sound stupid. I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't matter. So I'll say like your character really just helped give energy to the insecurity inside of me to remember, like, we're supposed to be having fun. Like that's literally the point of all of this. So I really enjoyed not doing too much backstory, but then coming in and like trying to figure it out on my feet.
Yeah. As someone who got to listen as y'all were playing, I know Rene and Kevin, this isn't a game that you've had much experience with. I know, Rene, part of why I really wanted you to play was we had a conversation like a year ago about how you had always wanted to play D&D and had never had a group to do it with. And I was like, I'm putting together a thing. Rene should play. How wonderful. But it was wonderful getting to watch y'all go from like, this is how I think my abilities work, to like, let's just like freestyle and spitball and like see what sticks and see what we're allowed to do versus what we're not allowed to do, or what the game can accommodate us doing, and like just see what happens. And so pivoting a little bit specifically to Rene and Kevin, I know, Kevin, you've talked a little bit about how like you weren't necessarily prepared to play a role, which is totally cool and totally fine.
Don't look at me.
But how did it feel to dive into this? What was that like for you, going from like what you thought about the game to the characters that you ended up developing in the moment?
The best part about the game was being with all of you, for me. We started recording it at the beginning of the quarantine. So I was already... I didn't recognize that some of the panic that I was feeling beforehand, when people were reaching out to me like Chris and Percy and you saying, we'll help you. And I was saying, I can't do anything. I don't know who I am anymore. Just whatever. If my work hadn't been canceled, I would have been in San Francisco recording this in the middle of a really creative situation. And what I found was that while I didn't, at least the first long night that we recorded, didn't know where I was and didn't really enjoy not knowing where I was and not thinking about it like really fertile improvisational ground like I normally think of making anything. I just kept thinking, I don't know how to do this, and these are lovely people who are helping me through it. And while I felt comfortable because Diercksen was all in, and Rene had flowers, and Nick had a pop filter on his microphone, and it was Percy and you and Anthony, even though there were people involved that I knew and it was making me feel comfortable, the only thing that kept me coming back was how good you all were at the game.
Mm.
So I can't say that if somebody said, "Hey Kev, let's play D&D," that I'd say, "Oh yes, absolutely." Again, I can say if I know that it's going to be a great social time for me to be playing the game, then I would do it. Right? If it were a bunch of people I didn't know, maybe not.
Oh, absolutely fair.
Yeah.
Rene, any thoughts, feels, vibes with your first foray?
I just liked it. I just like I said, it was a big challenge for me, and I finished feeling like I didn't give up, which I'm not a person who gives up, but I know that like when I feel like I don't know the answers, I can get super like I can become a robot, right? Everything can become really like conjured, and it's not authentic. So for me, I got to the end of it and I was thinking about the next day and I was like, that was super authentic, Rene. Well done. Well done. Especially because this internet thing, I hate it. I'm a site-specific improv artist. So like, I was like, oh, damn it. But it really, the online didn't get in the way, which was like my biggest worry that I would, because like seeing there's something about moving with bodies and playing versus like this screen and playing. So I got to the end of the next day and I was like, yeah, that was good. Like you were in. And the accent I didn't actually plan on. That literally, I opened my mouth and that came out.
Cool.
It is an accent I do in my shows. It's like one I play with, but it wasn't intended. The name is South African. And so I guess I just saying the name and being like, this is who I am. I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to go with it. So that surprised me. And I was actually really glad about it because I get really self-conscious about accents, but I really like playing with them. So to hear you say that you have like characters that you create and there's like lists and that you give characters away and like that blows my mind.
Listen, well, we'll do it. Like, we'll just set up a Zoom and like look at the player's handbook and look at a background and be like, why is a person in an adventure in a world full of horror? Why is this person leaving? Why would this person risk it? Right. And start there. And like, there's so many reasons why, and it's just an exercise in justification ultimately, because you roll those dice and you're like, well, they have a high charisma. So I'm either going to be, that's all that means is that's what I'm good at.
Right.
If you look at the stats for Chadrick Bosley, they're the stats of a fighter. They're not the stats of a bard. But like, I went, oh, well, this will be fun.
Yeah.
And what's the worst that happens? My imaginary character dies? That's sad.
Awful. That sounds terrible.
Like
if the character dies, I die with it. That
you die in real life.
Awful.
You die in the game. You die in real life.
Okay, Kevin. We're not all neo-futurists in the games that we play. It doesn't all have to be authentic all the time.
Okay,
true.
So that is completely true. But before I was a neo-futurist, I recognized that I created every single character that I ever played based on myself. And that might be because I was never a black actor who was like, I can play a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy, right? I was never one of those black actors. I'm a black actor who is black, who speaks like this and does audiobooks and does all kinds of characters, right? But if I'm playing a character, I'm gonna base it on myself. How is he different from me? How is she like me, what kind of hair what kind of wig would I need to put on to play this part, you know what I mean? So I have to say that if anybody believes that I was creating a character based on what they're hearing from D&D, from what we did, I would say to them, this is me just sort of riffing off of what everybody else was doing. I didn't have totally. Salt and sweet and hot. That is exactly me.
The Kavanaugh Free story. That hot sweetness.
That's
sweet hotness.
That sweet hotness. Yeah.
No, and I think that's totally fair. I think it's very natural for people who are starting D&D or just role-playing games in general to build characters that are very similar to them and play characters that are similar to them. Like, what would I do in this situation? And I think in some ways it's probably not until you've played like 5 or 6 different characters that you're like, okay, I know what I would do in this situation, but actually what would this person do and what would motivate them to do that, which is a different thing.
Well, and in some ways it's all, in ways that I think acting often is too. It's all just like different degrees of exercises in empathy, because that's sort of the role-playing exercise is projecting yourself into that character. So you have to be able to imagine doing what they would do. And that's, it's based on finding that continuity and that alikeness.
Mm-hmm. I think there's what also I find so thrilling about the game as a medium for storytelling is the moments that you surprise yourself as the character and you go, oh, I don't know if that came from me or if that came from the character, but I'm choosing, right? Like almost like the accent moment, right? Where you're just like, oh. But then so much of like in my imagination of this character moving around the space, that accent affects the way she moves. You know what I mean? Like, and so like, then and I'm sure it works the same way. And it certainly works the same way when I like, imagine my own characters. So it's like you start to build something and at a certain point, the character does sort of become alive beyond you. And I think it only gets easier to do that thing, that like non-metagaming, like I might choose, I'm going to run. To be fair, I would run away from all of these situations. You know what I mean? Like, as soon as you step into this game, you are a braver person and certainly a more stupid person. Than
I know I was.
Life,
definitely
right?
Stupider.
So
Dumb.
I think that's sort of like part of the fun of it too, is that you like, as a performer, you get to do that. As a storyteller, you get to do that and really make the improvised choice without actual consequence. But oh god, my character just jumped out of a burning building to get somebody bad.
I think that's a lovely moment to leave this section on. Thank you all so much for joining for this interview and this episode. And we'll catch you next time on Dungeons and Drama Nerds. Dungeons and Drama Nerds is produced by Todd Brian Backus, Percy Hornak, and Nick Orvis, and is mixed and edited by Anthony Sertel Dean. Of Mice and Monsters, our Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition adventure was written by Matthew Minnicino, featuring Christopher Diercksen as Chadrick Bosley, Kevin R. Free as Sriracha, Rene Goddess as Nokuzola, Nicholas Orvis as Gavin the Glorious, and Percy Hornak as our Dungeon Master. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at DN Drama Nerds. Check out our cast bios on our website, dungeonsanddramanerds.com, and tune in next week for another episode of Dungeons and Drama Nerds.